Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing another one of my book reviews, which aren't so much actual reviews as they are pseudo quasi reviews, because I don't, a real book review, you talk about the book and you talk about the plot line and you talk about, the ending and the characters, and I don't do that because I don't like to ruin books for anyone. So I try to just give you the gist of how I feel about the book, with a little bit of information about it, like, public knowledge information, like information that's printed on the back cover, to give you an idea of what it's about. But, so you'll know how I felt about it, but you won't know anything really about it, so that you can read it and not have anything ruined. So, I haven't done one of these in quite some time now, and here's why. This is a fairly hefty sized book. The book I'm talking about today is called Once an Eagle, and it's by Anton Myrer. I don't know if I'm saying that properly. The copyright on this book is 1968. And so it's a hefty book. And you guys will also recall that I read a new book and then I reread a book I've already read in between each new book that I read. So because of that, you don't, I don't review the same book multiple times. So it takes a little longer in between book reviews because of that, because I read a new one, and then the next book I'll be rereading is a book by Patrick Rothfuss. It's the second book in what is going to be a trilogy. It's called The Wise Man's Fear. And the first book is called The Name of the Wind. And right now that is my favorite, my all-time favorite book right now for adults. So, and I'm just waiting for him to finish the third book. But anyway, so I'm going to be reading that book again next, which means I'm going to have to get all the way through that book again, which is also a fairly hefty book, and then read another new book before you'll see a review. So my book reviews are few and far between, so hopefully my friends that are here just for beauty reviews won't mind, because they don't come up that often, and hopefully my friends actually like both. Okay, so this book, let me read the back to you. It says, Once an Eagle is the story of one special man, a soldier named Sam Damon, and his adversary over a lifetime, fellow officer Courtney Massengale. And I'm sorry, I've been sick, so I sound a little off. Damon is a professional who puts duty, honor, and the men he commands above self-interest. Massengale, however, brilliantly advances by making the right connections behind the lines and in Washington's corridors of power. Beginning in the French countryside during the Great War, the conflict between these adversaries solidifies in the isolated garrison life, marking peacetime, intensifies in the deadly Pacific jungles of World War II, and reaches its treacherous I don't know why that's not coming out properly, but it's not, conclusion in the last major battleground of the Cold War, Vietnam. A study in character and values, courage, nobility, honesty, and selflessness. Here is an unforgettable story about a man who embodies the best in our nation and in us all. Okay, so that is a little bit about what the book is about, but the book is about so much more than that. Okay, so this book is a tough read for a lot of reasons. One of them being that there's a lot of the text is written in foreign languages because, it's about war, and it's about military, and it's about being stationed all over the world. And especially the first half of the book, it's not like the book itself is written in foreign languages, but there's a lot of characters who speak or throw in a lot of foreign language, a lot of it French and some other things. And so if you don't know that language, it makes it kind of, it makes those sections difficult to get through. And I read for the pleasure of reading, so most of the time in this situation I'm reading for the pleasure of reading, so I'm not stopping and looking up the phrases and translating them to know exactly what they mean. So it makes it a little bit difficult because it makes it if there's sections where there's a lot of it, you really have to kind of read between the lines and sort of infer what's happening. So that's one reason. Another reason, because there is a lot of military jargon in it, because it is about, you know, a soldier. So there's a lot of military jargon. So if you're not familiar with military jargon, there's going to be a lot of that you have to work through. It's also difficult because the point of view that's, you know, the person who is sort of speaking at the time changes a lot, and it's not always, there's not always a smooth transition, or it's not always kind of clear right away that, okay, this is from somebody else's perspective. So that can be a little bit challenging to sort of, you know, keep in mind or keep in line as you're reading. You know, you might get a little ways and then realize, oh, this is somebody else who's talking now, kind of thing. It's also difficult because the jumps in time are significant, and the locations that change also sometimes without introduction. So that makes it difficult sometimes because it jumps through different wars. You know, sometimes like a chapter will finish and you're in one place in one scenario, and then the next chapter starts somewhere totally different. Or even sometimes, you know, like I said, from somebody else's perspective, or some years down the line, or what have you, and you're just like, okay, wait, you know, you're trying to figure out where are we in the story now, or what's happening now. So that's another reason why it's difficult. It's also difficult because this is a really thick book, and you can imagine that this had to have taken a long time to write. And I noticed that there are sections of the book where the author's voice sort of changes. Like, you can tell that certain portions of the book were written at different times, because the writing style sort of shifts, and it's a little disjointed. I mean, it's not going to bother somebody who's just reading to read, but if you're really a voracious reader and you really like to pay attention to writing style and like the voice of an author, you know, the voice of an author, and that kind of thing, you'll notice that. You'll notice that there's a section that's like, okay, this feels like something that was written either much later and sort of injected back in, or, you know, the editor had a lot to say about this section or something. You know, it just feels different. And that makes it a little bit difficult. So, I don't know, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that really make it a tough read. I mean, in plain and simple, it's just a big old fat book, and the chapters are fairly long, and it's just, you know, it's a meaty read to get through in the first place. So, I mean, all of that being said, now that I've intimidated you or made it seem like it's a daunting read, it really is a good book. This is one of those books that you'll read it, and I think at the end you'll feel glad that you read it. Even if you're struggling, even if you struggle with it, I think you'll feel appreciative that you powered through it. Whether you enjoy it or don't enjoy it, I think you're going to have an appreciation for it, which is kind of hard to explain, but I think for those of you that really read a lot, you understand what I mean. You know, sometimes you read a book and you hated the book, but at the same time you might think it's one of the best written books that you've read in a long time, even though you didn't like the way it ended, or you know, whatever. It's not your normal type of book that you enjoy reading, or you know, something along those lines. This could fall in any of those categories. I was actually expecting this to be hard to read from the war standpoint, because that's sort of how, if you read anything online about it, you know, like people's comment, you know, other author commentaries and that kind of thing. I expected the war part to be harder to stomach through, and it's not at all. And there's really only one or two spots where I just either wasn't buying it. Like, there's one thing that happens in the story where I'm like, you know what, am not buying that the character would succumb to that after all this time. And there's some portions sort of really at the very end where it's like, okay, they added a little more detail in related to war or other things, like the hard parts of war. But it wasn't all the way through the book, and so in some ways that almost didn't fit for me at the very end. But I really was expecting it to be, because it's kind of talked about as if, this really, gives you the dirty inside on war, the dirty details. I don't know. I don't know a good way to say it, but sort of making it seem like it's, gonna really tap into the violence and the bloodiness and everything. And it does. I mean, it does. It is a book about war, so it's in there, but it's not, to me, that's not at all. This is a book about character, about the character of a person. And also kind of how we get caught up in things, about human behavior. There's some politics. It's history. It covers a lot of like actual factual history in a way. As far as it covers wars that actually happened. But this is not like an autobiography type book. It's still a fictional book, but it does cover some factual information. So I'm going to challenge you guys to read it. I think it will be tough for a lot of people, and I think some of you will have to power through. There'll be sections where will have to power through. But I think it'll give you an appreciation, especially if you don't know about military at all. I mean, don't take this really verbatim, because it is a fictional story, so there is some drama added in. But I think if you don't know a whole lot about military lifestyle, it would be eye-opening. And I think you really will appreciate the character, how well the character is built, and the main character especially. And just the appreciation, you'll just have an appreciation for, I don't know, human morality, I think, especially nowadays. I think you'll appreciate that, whether you like, how the book flows or how it ends up, or, any of those types of things. I do think you will like it at the end, even if you don't like it. And I liked it. I did like it. So, I don't want anybody to think that this is a book that you should just expect not to like either. But, yeah, it's a challenge. So, either pace yourself or assign yourself a certain amount to read every day that's manageable, or, I don't know, what have you. But yeah, I would say give it a read. And I do think this is the kind of book that's like a good gift for a reader. I do think. Especially for a reader. Now, somebody who never reads ever, I wouldn't give them this. But somebody who reads on a regular basis, I think this is a book that they'll really appreciate. And they'll say to you, that's pretty different from anything else I've ever read. So, that's what I have to say about that. And I feel like I'm forgetting some things that I wanted to tell you about it. But it's a difficult read for many different reasons. Not difficult, but there's some challenging aspects to it. But I think you'll appreciate it when you're done. Okay, so feel free to ask me questions. I answer them in a very careful way when I get them, because I don't want my answer to blow anything for anyone who might read the comments. Tell me what you've been reading lately so that I can add those things, if I haven't read them, to my to read list, because I really do keep a list. I have a very long to read list, but I really do add what you guys recommend to my list, and I will read them. Might not be right away, but I will read them. So, you know, tell me what you're reading and what you recommend, and even if you don't recommend it, you know, you can tell me that too, but I'll probably read it anyway and see if we feel the same way. So, let me know that kind of stuff in the comments, and it'll be a little while before the next one probably, but I will do more of these. So if you're one of my book review followers, then stay tuned, because I'm still doing them. It'll just be a little while, because I've been picking some hefty books lately. Alright, have a great day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.